On today's episode, I'm thrilled to be interviewing Bill Marler. I've been following his work for quite some time, really since we started working on Eat Cleaner, because he is the food safety attorney in the country. He's become the most prominent foodborne illness lawyer in America and has represented thousands of individuals in claims against food companies whose contaminated products have caused life-altering injury and even death. Most notably, he started his career by helping to litigate his clients that were victims of the Jack in the Box E.Coli 0157H7 outbreak. And that work was chronicled in the 2011 book, Poisoned, The True Story of the Deadly E. coli Outbreak That Changed the Way Americans Eat, by best-selling author Jeff Benedict. For the last 25 years, Bill has represented victims of nearly every large outbreak in the U.S. Everybody from Dole to Chipotle, McDonald's, KFC, Jack in the Box, of course, Taco Bell, Wendy's, you name it. And through his work, he has secured over $600 million for victims of E. coli, salmonella, and other foodborne illnesses. But what you're about to hear from Bill is there is no price that you can put on being a victim of foodborne illness. And there are a lot of ways that you can protect your plate. We're going to dive into that and hear from Bill directly on what he thinks needs to change in the food industry in order to help people have confidence again in eating a salad. Let's listen. Hi, I'm Maria, otherwise known as the Fit Foodie. I'm a chef, holistic nutritionist, author, inventor, and mom. And I want to welcome you to my podcast. It's called Recipes for Your Best Life. And with every episode, I'm peeling back the onion on fitness, nutrition, health, wellness, and family. The truth is, you're the chef of your life. And for every important pillar, there's a great recipe worth sharing. So every week, we'll explore them together. Think of it as food for thought that you can really sink your teeth into. So join me, and let's squeeze the joy out of this life, because you only get one. Can I get a fork, yeah? Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
You know, I've been a follower of yours for about 12 years now, since I really started diving into the world of food safety with the research that we were doing for our products. But you've been entrenched in this world for quite some time. What got you into food safety specifically?
Well, I was just, in a sense, just another young lawyer about 4 or 5 years out of law school when the Jack in the Box E. coli outbreak erupted. And in many ways, the epicenter of it was, the Pacific Northwest. Most of the people that got sick, most of the people that died were here locally in the sort of Puget Sound region.
And that's where you're based, right?
In Seattle area. And ultimately there were over 600 people sick, 4 kids died, and about 75, mostly children, suffered acute kidney failure. So, and I wound up representing, most of the severely injured children in that outbreak. And that litigation went on for about a year and a half, almost 2 years. And then, frankly, as that outbreak was winding down, other foodborne illness cases were referred to me from lawyers and people from around the country. And in 1998, I started Marler Clark with a handful of lawyers and staff. And we've been focused on foodborne illness cases, exclusively representing victims for the last 21 years.
Had there, prior to that incident, and for everybody listening, the Jack in the Box incident that we're talking about was related to E. coli and hamburgers. Was there anything that looked like that prior to this happening? I mean, I feel like that was sort of like the big bomb that dropped that woke everybody up a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, the answer to the question is that there certainly were foodborne illnesses before Jack in the Box. There wasn't foodborne illness litigation. That was really something that, we developed, but it had a lot to do with it. It was a lot of things came together at the same time. It was, not only, the media, internet, ability to communicate much faster in many respects, but also the technology of genetic fingerprinting to make sure that, you knew what was causing it and being able to link things up. All of that sort of happened in the early to mid 90s, and then, has gotten more and more sophisticated, in the last 2 decades.
Well, and I think, too, it's one thing to get sick from foodborne illness, but it's another thing when literally dozens of people are getting really, really sick all at once. And so when that happened, you were kind of, I'm sure, writing the script, so to speak, from a legal perspective on what would happen. What was your experience going through that? I bet that was a really tough one. There were a lot of children that were affected by that outbreak.
Yeah, I just wrote a foreword to a book written by one of the fathers of one of the children that died. I worked on that this weekend and shared it with him, and it was a pretty devastating time frame. I mean, it's hard to describe just how intense the Jack in the Box case was, especially in Seattle. I mean, we had, one of the clients I represented was in a coma for 145 days. And they basically, every day, Brianne Kiner in the coma, day 67, 68. Wow. And, they were flying dialysis machines in from Minneapolis because there were too many people on dialysis. It was really, in many respects, like a war zone. Wow. And it was pretty devastating. And I've gotten to know a lot of the people over the years, some who I represented, some who I didn't represent, who lost children. And, it certainly was a very emotional time for everyone.
And I think, something that I want to ask you a little bit more about is, we as consumers hear about these outbreaks, and certainly it's become almost like part of our daily vocabulary, I feel. And we'll talk a little bit more about the current outbreaks, but the word outbreak, I feel like people are somewhat numb to it until it hits them. Yeah. But when it hits, it's absolutely devastating. I mean, you shared that you wrote a foreword to this book. I mean, what is it like to be in the middle of literally this completely life-changing experience for a family as you're trying to also just defend them and, help compensate them, but there's no amount of money that you can put on a life.
No, I just finished up a case recently of a now 13-year-old boy. He was 11 when he was sick. He ate soy nut butter that was contaminated with E.Coli. He had a peanut allergy. Parents were, trying to do the right thing for him. It was contaminated. He and 32 other people in the United States got sick, but he, for whatever reason, and sometimes we just don't know these things, he was hospitalized in the ICU for 4 months. Wow. Nearly $2 million in medical bills. He's lost his large intestines. He is going to undergo a kidney transplant. Hopefully his kidney will last long enough to get through the school year. But his mother's going to be the donor. He has all kinds of other issues, health-related issues. He's not growing normally because of the damage to his body. This is more than just, a tummy ache. Fortunately, these kinds of devastating illnesses are not super common, but they're common enough for me. And we've seen in this recent outbreaks, a variety of outbreaks of romaine tainted with E. coli, some incredibly severely injured people, not only deaths, but people who are left with lifetime complications.
And so let's go back to Jack in the Box. After that outbreak, there were processes that were put into place, industry-wide to help prevent something like that happening. And in that case, when you have ground beef that's cooked to a certain temperature, there is, there's a kill there. There's a kill that, it's never 100%, but certainly it's a lot less risky. What is causing all of these different types of outbreaks now that we're seeing? You talked about the soy nut butter. We're seeing lettuce over and over again. Like, why can't we seem to get this under control?
So, these foodborne pathogens, whether it's Salmonella, there's 2,000 varieties of Salmonella, whether it's Listeria, Shigella, Campylobacter, E. coli, their jobs are to sicken their host to allow for the spread of the bacteria, through vomiting or diarrhea. That's sort of their job. And they combat us as we combat them. And they evolve, at a rate way faster than, we can ever imagine. For just focusing on, just look at two bacterium that are, I think, in many respects, although they don't cause the most illnesses in the U.S. population or around the world, they usually cause the most devastating. And one, E. coli 0157, which is the pathogen that we deal with today in romaine. That bug has been around for a while, but it was amplified by concentrated feedlots. When you have cows, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of cows, sharing these bacteria with each other and getting into the environment. And there's some good, literature on the fact that, grain is fed these animals, which isn't their normal thing that they're supposed to eat. It creates acidic in their acid in their stomach. And these particular kinds of pathogens thrive well in an acidic environment. So you by the environment that you created, this mass-produced food environment, you created these bugs to survive and now have populated into the environment. And now we see it all the time. Listeria, Listeria monocytogenes, that is a deadly bacterium. It usually hospitalizes 99% of the people and kills about a third. That's a bug that has grown up and evolved alongside of human refrigeration. The fact that we are refrigerating foods to knock down spoilage and bacterial growth for other pathogens. Listeria has found a niche where it grows really well at refrigerator temperatures. And so those two bugs have figured out a way to adapt to things that we have done as human beings. And now we're having to deal with the consequences of that. So it's not going to be an easy fix to fix those two things, because now they're frankly endemic in our daily lives. Mm-hmm. It's a problem.
And so, with our state of the food industry and how food is being created, and it's being created for the masses, do you think that a lot of what's been happening lately is negligence? Or do you think that the checks and balances what if you could pinpoint maybe what a problem is, and I know that's a really big net to cast, but is there a way, let's just focus for now on produce, because produce has been the headline that keeps popping up, and it's romaine lettuce